When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying time is here. That's right. We're talking about 2013's Evil Dead on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from a cabin in the woods. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we're dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters, and we're unpacking all the goriest, and I do mean goriest, details of 2013's rebootiquel Evil Dead, in the hopes that a young person's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes we might make at their expense. And as always, there's only one person I trust to make sure that they know where the nail gun is at any given time. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How you doing today, Gina?
I'm gonna have such a hard time talking about this movie because as much as I brought up thinking it's funny what happens to Lou Taylor Pucci's character and what this poor man, even though really it's his fault. You know, it is
entirely his fault.
He picked up that fucking book. He insisted on transcribing it, which let me say first and foremost, I would never do. Because I've seen enough movies to know that that's never a good idea. You pick up a weird book that has a face on it, and it's in a language you don't understand. Don't sit there and try to figure out what it's saying. And yet at the same time, I would be absolutely the character in the cabin that gets the most heinous shit happening to them before I finally just die for good.
He does very much suffer for his sins. And people suffer for other people's sins. People just suffer in this movie.
Yeah.
As suffering is kind of the point.
Not a good time. This is not hijinks.
No. So a bit of background. Let's just say for the record, like, did you see this in theaters? Did you catch it at home? What was your approach to 2013's Evil Dead?
I did not see it in the theater. I was a latecomer to this because when it came out, I was like, okay, making a new one finally. And then I heard, no Bruce Campbell, although he does pop up at the very end, the very, very, very end. And not funny. And at first, like, well, I don't want to see that. Yeah. Even though, again, the first one, as cheesy as it is not, I don't think it's intentionally funny. I think it's funny just by design of, just how, substandard, and again, they were doing the best that they could with, the $8 that they had to film with.
Exactly.
But it's got a sort of very hokey charm to it. This one is, this is very dark. We're not, having jokes, no slapstick in this. It's not Ash making faces and talking to his hand and all. Like, this is just gonna be like real dark, scary shit. And I'm like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And then I decided to give it a chance. I don't know, 2013, probably like 5 years later, I finally decided to give it a shot. I'm like, oh boy, was I wrong that I didn't want to see this. This is a darn good movie.
Yes.
Not a good time, but a good movie.
Right. Yeah. I think that is very, very accurate. I mean, once again, you're an assassin when it comes to these things. You always hit the target. This is a great movie. It is not a great time.
No.
And I think it's brave to do it that way. I think a lot of this really comes down to, I saw this in the movie theater. My initial reaction to it was, wow, they've really gone for it. And I appreciate they've gone for it, but I'm not really sure these aren't my deadites. I don't feel attached to this in the same way I feel attached to the tridge of the Evil Dead. And then when it did come out on video, I watched it again and I said, listen, you've got to eliminate your expectations of this and really come into it with the way the movie sets the table. And I hate to be the proponent of marketing here, but the marketing really did say something. It made a promise, something that most remakes don't. We're not going to aim for the widest audience. This isn't a 4-quadrant hit. We're not trying to make $1 billion with this. When you designate on the poster and you say, this is the most terrifying film you will ever experience, you're telling the squeamish that it might not be for you. And you're also telling the faithful that you aren't aiming for some sort of Evil Dead 2 outright humor, and you're hewing to the original's declaration of the most grueling horror experience of all time. And I think this brings it back to grueling. I would argue it perhaps might be more grueling than the original Evil Dead, because that does not invite you to really know those characters. If you didn't know who Bruce Campbell was, and we talked about this when we talked about the movie, if you didn't know who Bruce Campbell was in it, you would not designate him as the person who lives at the end of it. It's just he happens to be the one who survived. But when Raimi and Tappert and Campbell came into this, I think one of the biggest reasons why this works is that they came into it with the idea that it should not be a straight remake. It should live in the universe. And the other thing is there's no Ash replacement.
Nope.
There might be things that harken back to that film that show you that it's informed and in that universe. But no one character is specifically the Ash of the motion picture. And I think that's because instead of trying to recreate characters, they did something outrageous that I would argue the Evil Dead franchise did not do as a habit. And that was to create actual characters.
These are all like, lived in characters. You understand where these people are coming from.
And Mia in this is being forced to kick her heroin habit, something that no one believes in that group she will do on her own or be able to accomplish with any sort of normal access to the real world. So they take her out of that world into this foreboding wilderness where she cannot access her usual bag of tricks. If she escapes, she can't go far. There's a limit to what she can do simply by location.
Yeah, and you really get a sense that this is a last ditch effort.
Right.
And they don't go too much into the shit she's pulled, but none of them really trust her. And at least half of them are there under duress. It's
obvious that Olivia, who is a registered nurse, has a lot of experience here. Eric has been through this and is really trying to logic his way out of her addiction, which I hate to tell people, addiction doesn't really hew to those words. Logic flies out the window. And then David, her brother, has been avoiding all of this. He didn't want to be there for his mother's mental health issues, and he has kept that up to the point where he has avoided any sort of active participation in Mia getting better from her addiction issues. Natalie's just along for the ride. She's there because David says, I'm going to do this. And she's like, I'll help, which does not help her in the end. Ooh. No one really escapes this unscarred.
No, nobody does.
The thing is that dynamic, that very real world dynamic, I think is what really helps elevate this beyond simply an Evil Dead franchise entry and into a mirror of society in a sense that the other films just didn't really have time for. I mean, yes, you can read a bunch of different things into Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, and we have. But ultimately, those are aims that are refractions. They're not intentions. Here, the intention is that this group is already fractured with real emotional issues before they even enter the cabin. They have drawn lines for themselves. They have stated why they are there, why they think other people haven't been there in the past, and have attempted to resolve what they are willing to do in the circumstance. And David's the person who's like, well, I don't know that he believes Mia's disease of addiction is as serious or warrants this level of commitment until he's told that she OD'd not, a couple of times.
Right, because he's just been out of the picture for a while. There's also the extra added element of he walked away and left her taking care of their sick mother. So there's a lot of tension to this, and I think it's funny that because my oft repeated complaint in slasher movies is of having these seemingly random characters who are spending a weekend together in a cabin when they clearly hate each other. Right. Here, it's like, I buy that these are people who were, close at one time and then for a variety of reasons have sort of drifted. But they're coming together, as best as they can to try to help Mia, even though I don't know that any of them think it's going to work.
Two of them have experience in her lying her way back into addiction. It's making grand proclamations of how this is the last time and she's in it to win it and she's going to go through this to get out the other side. And then she skedaddles.
So let me ask you something. So I know you tend to do some deep dives into the backgrounds of these movies. Do you know if anybody involved in the making of this might have had a loved one or a sibling or anything that struggled with addiction? Because this feels very authentic to me. Because I have. And so the sense of that, cynicism and frustration, but also a tiny little crumb of hope that maybe this will be the time that sticks. That felt very realistic to me. And
it must be informed in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I went through the special features of the R-rated version. That's the only version that has special features. And then I watched the unrated cut. And no one mentioned it specifically. That being said, you have to believe that someone at least has experience here because there's too many elements of this that feel well researched and at least if they didn't live it, they researched it to the point where they wanted to do this in a way that felt real.
Yeah, like your initial thought is, they're being, a little hard on her, but then you're like, no, this has been going on for years.
Yeah.
And yeah, it wears you down. It really does. I mean, speaking from my own experience, it's like, I don't want to deal with this shit anymore.
It's hard to convince someone who is adamant that they're going to, remove themselves from this mortal coil in slow motion, and you help them to divert that path, and they just keep yanking the wheel back over to self-destruction. And at a certain point, it's not like you want them to do it, but you yourself don't possess the strength, wherewithal, or the magic key to make them not act in that fashion. You have to, in a sense, accept who they are and just try to put themselves in a decent place. And like Olivia's goal here is like, if we just get past the 72-hour mark, where it's out of her system, and then we could put her into a treatment facility without having to get past this, without her cold turkeying inside there, where she's in like civilization. If she can do that outside, we give her a leg up. Maybe this time, and if she doesn't this time, maybe that's all we can do. But this is what we can do right now, and at least David is participating in it to a certain degree, which I believe is what, Eric thinks is kind of like the missing key here. It's like, thanks for showing up, asshole. Like, we've all been trying to rescue your sister, and you've been like, well, I don't want to deal with it. And so there's a lot of resentment running deep.
Yeah, it's like basically the attitude towards David is, where the fuck have you been all this time? And that is valid.
It is a very valid question.
He more than anybody else should be at the forefront of trying to get her clean, and he just like fucked off somewhere for like 5 years.
This comes out after you have a lot of movies, some successful, i.e. A Cabin in the Woods, and some unsuccessful in my mind, let's say Cabin Fever, that borrowed, stole, elements of those first three films. And I feel like with Raimi, Tappert, and Campbell all on board here and allowing Fede Alvarez and his writing and producing team to come on board and run wild. If it's within the scope, if it's within the world, that's all we ask. Give this generation an Evil Dead. Don't worry about being the Evil Dead. Be an Evil Dead. And I think it really frees this movie to do shit that that the franchise had not. I won't say no other movie, because we'll eventually be talking about Rise, which I think pulls from the same sort of philosophy to great success there. But the first three movies just are kind of like, these are experiences. And this is like, no, you're going to experience something very specific. The fact that you feel for these characters is not just the torture they go through. It's because they're attempting to do a good thing. You want to see these people survive this, and only one of them is going to.
Right, and obviously she is not going to be the same after this.
We'll get to it. Even as she's reborn to a certain degree, she does not come out of this unscarred. So let us not, put that aside.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/pod.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 7 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
I think there's a relevance here that isn't as oft talked about, and it's weird that it, arrives in the package of an Evil Dead movie, and that is drug addiction in this time of a drug epidemic, an opioid epidemic, was very prescient. It's already attempting to do something that the other films just didn't want to do. This wants to engage with. And so I think her addiction is a perfect metaphor for that time, because it defies rational thought. It doesn't hew to logical actions. And as much as Mia is caught in this snare that she set for herself, her brothers and friends, as you noted, have kind of defined themselves in this group dynamic in accordance to her addiction. Whether they want to or not, she is the center that's holding them together, and she is a center that's actively trying to destroy itself. Right. David's naive, to say the least, but still believes he's some sort of mighty fixer, believing that if he simply shows up, finally, things will change. And Natalie's a complete outsider to this. So, she's there out of commitment to her boyfriend at the very least. Olivia's faith has eroded after multiple unsuccessful detoxes, nearly successful moments in which Mia has crashed on drugs, previous broken promises, burdened with the knowledge that addicts will say or do anything to score again. She has the knowledge that this 72 hours is going to go sideways, and that's before deadites arrive.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, that the I don't know if irony is the right word, but everybody's attitude in this sort of, seals their doom. Mm-hmm. Where Olivia is, being aware that Mia, is a wily sort who is a liar, because a lot of unfortunately a lot of addicts are. So when she starts saying weird shit, but that turns out to be correct, right? Olivia's first reaction to that, understandably, is, well, she's just making up shit. Right. Because why wouldn't you think that? If she's traditionally said crazy shit to sort of distract you, or because her brain's getting cooked on drugs, she starts saying, oh, the trees came alive and tried to assault me. You're like, yeah, whatever. Just we got 65 hours to go.
Right.
It's like, David is sort of indifferent to the whole thing and doesn't really get involved until it's probably already too late. Yeah. Natalie just, made the mistake of, join my boyfriend for a nice weekend in the woods. It'll be fun. Yeah. And Eric shouldn't have picked up that fucking book.
Well, Eric is like simmering with anger. He feels left behind.
He's tired of dealing with this shit.
He definitely has a codependency issue. Yeah. That is first and just very upfront there.
And he probably feels, and again, speaking from personal experience, he probably feels desperately unappreciated for his efforts.
Yes. He's not the glorious brother that David was. He's just the person who stuck around. Right. And he also feels somewhat smarter than everyone else, because there's an inflated he's a
weenie. He's absolutely a weenie. But he's a weenie I understand.
Yes. Their way out of it. Like, the only way out of what they've gotten themselves into is to go directly through hell, actually. And that means they need to listen to one another. And all this unexamined tension and avoidance of the truth is just like constantly crumbling the facade around them. There's not a lot to hold on to, because they don't trust Mia, because Mia is inherently untrustworthy, and they don't trust each other because they've all been through variations of this before, with the exception of Natalie, who's just not a part of the group. David's avoided everything. It's just ripe. It's a ripe environment for demonic possession. I would argue, Gina, and this is my grand theory here,
yes,
which I will get into the details of, that this story's progression can be viewed in two interconnected ways: the 5 stages of grief and the 12 steps of addiction recovery. Now, I'm going to take the 5 stages of grief because in 2013, that was the year my stepfather-in-law died of cancer. It was his 3rd bout of cancer. He was a Vietnam vet exposed to Agent Orange, and he got all 3 of the cancers that are associated with Agent Orange. He survived 2 of them, and despite the fact that they found the 3rd so early that he was a medical anomaly, it still ended up taking his life. And I think partially that may have been what was blocking my appreciation of the film, because I didn't want to connect with that emotion. I kind of was in denial myself, which is where we're going to start, Gina. Denial.
Are we now like a 2-person group therapy?
I told you before we started recording, I wept openly at the end of this movie. This is not a movie I think most people cry at the end of. But when I started to view it through this lens, I found it to be insanely cathartic.
No, I can understand. I think that of the entire series, I think this one is the most powerful. And before anybody freaks out, no, that doesn't mean I think it's the best one. I think that they're all good.
They have an incredible success rate.
Yeah, there's not a clinker in the bunch.
5 out of fucking 5 for good to great movies.
We've kept saying the only horror franchise I can think of where every single one is solid gold.
I think the only one that kind of even comes close is Child's Play Chucky, only in that it constantly reinvents itself to be something new. I think it does stagnate around that third movie, but even still, it finds ways to resurrect itself as a different kind of horror movie. And so that level of inventiveness is not necessarily what's at play with the Evil Dead franchise. They're playing they're both playing sports, but they're playing different kinds of sports.
Right.
In my mind.
But I think this one definitely has, it really, going back to the whole feeling that these characters in this situation that they're in, again, before the deadites show up, is very relatable. So I think this one has got a lot of interesting and unexpected emotion to it. Yeah. For a movie that goes as insanely hard in the violence area as it does,
and it does have flourishes of that Raimi style visual dialogue. It does have a ram cam. It does, run a camera through the woods. It does throw people into cement walls. Like, there's a lot of shit that is very Evil Dead about this movie. It's just that the grounding of it is connected to this very human, emotional experience. So I think really denial begins to start when they show up. And we've talked about that. They're fractured. They don't believe in one another. They believe this is the last chance, but secretly they think, well, this has got like a 33% chance of working. And Mia enters the door and already smells that something's off. She's like, something fucking smells in here. And none of them believe her, because what is there to believe from an addict? It takes the dog named Grandpa digging up the rug to the cabin's real basement, and they discover this terrifying scene of a burnt post and shotgun shells and dead cats hanging from chains. I mean, this makes the other Evil Dead basements kind of look like Club Med.
This was particularly appalling. Quick question. Is this supposed, I feel like I should know this already, but I don't for certain. Is this supposed to be a direct sequel to 2?
It is meant to be taking place in the same sort of later timeline. The classic is there. The clock is still in the same place on the wall. It is to a certain degree the cabin, but it's not like a timeline sequel.
Okay, because I assume that what they are looking at is the evidence of the opener with the teenage girl getting burned to death, but she deadites out right beforehand and they shoot her.
Right. And the door and the floor is not in the same spot. Like, there's all sorts of differences here. And it's then sort of, to get into the lore, let's just go whole hog and dive in. When Ash finds 3 books of the dead in Army of Darkness, they're not just like traps. You can propose that there are in fact 3 different books of the dead, and he needs to interact with one of them. That's why those 2 are traps to him. But those other 2 books exist. And conversely, this is taking place with book 2. And supposedly Evil Dead Rise takes place with book 3.
So they're like spiritual sequels, sort of.
Yes.
Okay.
They are sequels. It is a multiverse. We're dealing with magic and vortexes and demonic, possession. So there is no hard and fast truth. And ultimately, it's a sidestep from worrying about keeping up with some sort of continuity, when in point in fact, this was set up to just be its own thing.
Okay, got it.
But I think it's a worthy question, and one that I don't think has the easiest of answers to say. I'm sure someone in this audience is listening to this right now and just yelling at their phone.
Yeah, I mean, this is a controversial one. There are a lot of people who don't like it. There are a lot of people who do want, and I think that they felt the same way about the 2022 one, where they want the slapsticky Evil Dead.
Yes.
And I get that. I understand that. But there's, it's that whole, why can't we try something different? No, not like that thing at work.
Yes.
But I just, I think you could have two great tastes that go great together.
And I just don't see the point of it. This does the assignment that like you said, like everyone asks from one of these rebootiquels, which is give me the same but different. And this does that, and unlike we mentioned right up top, like it's not a feel good movie.
No, this is not a party movie. Like you could put on like the first three Evil Deads. Like I would even say that certainly the first one and definitely Army of Darkness would be even good introductory horror. As I mentioned, my daughter's first horror movie was Army of Darkness. She was about 7 or 8. Yeah. I would not put this on for anybody who is relatively new to horror.
Yes. No. This isn't we are into the 202 to 303 area of horror when you get to Evil Dead 2013. Because there's a lot more going on here. It really is the point of it, is to dig deeper into these characters and really examine that phenomenon in relation to an Evil Dead movie. And it makes people uncomfortable. It's not exactly what they want, and that's fine. But I don't think you can judge it based on that particular criteria, I suppose.
Right.
One of the other things they discover in that basement, as you mentioned, is a book wrapped in barbed wire. And out of morbid curiosity or boredom, Eric decides to investigate this.
Why?
And then Mia says to them, you shouldn't have touched anything in there. And she's right.
She's right about everything.
She is, but she's also an addict who constantly lies to get high. So there's nothing for her to stand on. She is right, but there's no way to verify that because she will say anything to get high. So
yeah, that's the thing. Like everybody's doubt and cynicism seals their doom.
Even though they're presented with pretty compelling evidence.
She didn't have, this history of addiction. Maybe they could have gotten away before shit started going down.
They're kind of trapped between a reality of whether this detox will work and discovering something that should honestly have them running for the hills. Once again, they choose denial. It comes down on them like a hammer.
That tells me that this feels very personal.
This is either learned, really heavily researched, or learned through experience.
Right.
There's only one, two. And I wish I could have discovered the answer to that before we were recording today, but we've been recording back to back to back.
No, I'm satisfied. I feel like it. It feels very authentic to me.
Yes.
The root of every kind of addiction problem is denial.
Is just avoidance taken to its extreme, and you kind of see that, and this I instantly flashed back to was Mia just walking in circles in the rain. She wants out. There's nowhere to go. She's just walking in circles. And this was something I once found myself doing as a teenager. And I just wanted out of this situation, but there was no out. I had to go through, and I had somewhat of a breakthrough out of that. She does too, but my breakthrough didn't have a body count. Hers does.
Well, like what is that saying? I think Churchill said it, when you're walking through hell, keep going.
Right.
That's kind of what's happening here.
Weirdly enough, it springs up in different capacities. I mean, Eric, as we've mentioned, suffers a lot over the course of this movie. And you can say that, weirdly enough, he doesn't give up. Like, he passes out, but he doesn't give up. And even when he does, his body gets taken over by something else and keeps on going, Gina.
Takes a licking, it keeps on ticking.
Yeah, and so Eric, the source of our main problem here, with his curiosity piqued, the feeling of not being respected by everyone else.
I do think that him opening the book and the first page he goes to has like, don't read this book. I think that was, a little bit to be a little elbowing the audience. Like, of course he's going to read the book.
Right. He's told directly. It's not a ghostly voice telling him to get out of the haunted house. He's being told, buy a book. Don't read this fucking book. And then he starts doing magic tricks to read it, Gina.
He's like, I'm going to read the book.
Oh, fuck me. And so everything on the inside and the outside of this book tells him to leave it the fuck alone. But he believes, I guess, that he's too smart to not investigate further. There are torn out pages that prevent him from speaking the words, even though it says, don't read it, don't say it, don't listen to it. And he's like, I got to get to the bottom of this shit. His self-worth is just wrapped up in like a educational bravado, I suppose, because he's the school teacher.
It may also be, that he just needs something to distract him from how, uncomfortable and miserable this weekend's going to be, because also nobody seems to have brought anything to entertain themselves. Like they are just all sitting around, I guess planning on just watching me a detox all weekend.
Yeah, you would have thought someone would have brought a book on tape.
Right. Nobody seems to have brought any books. Nobody seems to have brought like a radio, like nothing to keep them entertained.
He, of course, finds a way to fucking speak the words, and he opens the gate to hell. And then Mia senses this and skedaddles. She does what she does best, skedaddle. She steals Olivia's car. She tries to drive off. The entire time she's driving, she's saying, what the fuck am I doing? This is insane. Don't do this. But her foot never comes off the gas. It's all run and no stop.
Nope.
This ends up with her nearly crashing into a doppelganger and then into the swamp. And then she pulls herself out of that swamp, falls into the thorny briar patch. And here we get one of our bigger allusions to the original Evil Dead. I had sort of envisioned this as not quite as sexual as the Evil. It's certainly not as punctuated as the Evil Dead's tree rape, not to be glib about it. But it's still a violation. It's still an inherently sexual violation. It's just slithering rather than
anything that involves taking someone, restraining them by their arms and legs is going to inherently come off as sexual, or that an assault is about to take place.
And I get why Mia's trying to escape. It's part of her character. She wanted to escape her situation with her mom. She's been wanting to escape reality. So yes, on a level, there's culpability on her part. But this new improbable reality is impossible to differentiate from an addict's fabrications, as you mentioned earlier. So when she comes back into the cabin, it's like, hey, the woods attacked me. They're like, where's my car? Were you trying to escape? Were you trying to leave here so you could go do drugs somewhere? Probably were. And so her experience just doesn't go much further.
I mean, quite frankly, it's a little bit like how people tend to react to a woman who's been sexually assaulted. Like,
yes, it does. Another dark mirror to society in a film franchise that's not really known for them, which is, again, I think what people bumped up against.
They are definitely trying something a little more than, Scary House in the Woods with a weird book. I
think they're trying for both. They're trying for the scariest house in the woods with characters with real fucking problems and emotional reactions.
And makes you understand, here's why these people are vulnerable to this.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 7 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
Throughout this, David is in a sense of denial. I mean, The movie moves on, but David's denial is pretty persistent for the majority of this film.
Yeah, I think he's basically waiting around for proof that she is not as in bad shape as everybody else is saying. And then it suddenly becomes apparent that she is, but not for the reason he thinks that she is.
I mean, his first sort of final crossing over to something is both off here and something is really off with Mia, that this is real, that he finds Grandpa, the dog, bludgeoned to death. And the words that come out of his mouth are, "This can't be happening." Oh, it's happening, motherfucker.
Right. And it's like, okay, now you know this is bad. Why are you still standing around looking like someone just hit you in the head? But at the same time, it's like, I don't know how I would react in a situation like that. It's like I know who did this, but I can't parse it.
Right. This is, I think, the kind of secret genius of this movie in its construction is it is giving you a full meal. It is not just steak. You are getting vegetables here. And you have to open yourself up to the idea of those vegetables to really consume the entirety of the meal. If you just want one side, I think you're going to bump up against the other element that is not really competing with it, but is the entirety of the plate that should be in front of you. You have to eat all of it to really enjoy it,
right,
in my mind.
Exactly.
And this is where we get into anger, Gina. Because if I found my fucking dog bludgeoned to death with a hammer, I would be angry. And accusations start to fly of what they should do next, what should happen, who's responsible. And, at a certain point, David's like, I don't know. I think we wait until another day and then we should be fine. And then Eric says, everything has been getting worse every single second. And he too is right.
Yeah. Even though it's his fault.
It is his fault. And what comes next is Mia nearly scalding herself, or actually genuinely scalding herself.
Oh yeah, that skin's almost coming off.
Because the boiler is boiling over and then it's hitting her as the emotions in the group are boiling over, not to put too fine a point on it.
Oh, I think that's quite intentional.
This is also something that's designated in this particular Necronomicon, that someone will have to be boiled to death, basically. And so she gets, halfway there. And then once they discover that, they put a stop to it. They sedate her, and then they start to have yet another angry conversation about what to do next, which only ends because Mia, now fully possessed, walks into the room, explodes the door open with lightning in we are fully into an Evil Dead movie now, and shoots David in the shoulder and passes her possession off to Olivia via prodigious blood vomit.
I love the blood vomit.
I mean, holy shit.
I think the 10s, there was a lot of blood vomiting happening in that period.
Yes. I think we should start to track blood vomit, but there's not as much sudden oatmeal syndrome. We do get to what I feel is the homage to sudden oatmeal syndrome eventually, but this movie is playing in a different level than sudden oatmeal syndrome.
Yeah. This is the corn syrup budget must have been considerable.
And when Olivia goes to wash off her face and get more drugs to put Mia under, it turns out that the book flips to a page that says, hey, time to cut off a bunch of your flesh. Flesh must be offered. And so Eric discovers her slicing off her own fucking cheek. It is grisly, y'all.
And this is the first of many injuries that Eric will experience.
Yes.
I every time he falls back against that toilet, I feel it in my spine.
I mean, he is a pincushion.
Like she stabs him with a syringe a bunch of times.
Yes.
And the needle breaks off under his eye.
Under his eye. It is grisly. He does mention earlier that the book is not related to voodoo because voodoo requires objects, but it is weird that he then becomes a voodoo doll. Again, there's intentionality to every line of dialogue.
I mean, I do think it's funny as someone who wears glasses that the fact that he had his glasses on is like the only thing that kept that syringe from going right in the old eyeball.
Yes.
Several times, possibly.
Several times.
I'm like, okay, I said I'm never taking my glasses off ever again, just in case I'm confronted with a zombie attacking me with a syringe.
Olivia manages to stab him in the shoulder, stab him multiple times in the arm, chest, and underneath his face, underneath his eye, and is about to stab him yet again when he kicks her into the sink. She hits her head on the sink and then ricochets off of that into the basin of the shower tub. It's not even a tub. It's just a shower with a very low basin. And she's gone. So.
Yeah, these ones, they die. I would say they do die a little easier than the oatmeal deadites. Like, you could just kill them like regular people.
Ultimately, the difference between this Necronomicon and the Necronomicon of the Orig Tridge is that the goal of this one is not simply to open the portal to hell and possess everyone. It is to open a portal to hell where something comes out the other side. These rituals have to be accomplished for that creature, the abomination, to come up out of the ground.
And it seems like, preferably with as much suffering and torment involved as possible, which is why so much of this involves the dead. What's everybody turned into dead, like spending a amount of time hurting themselves, which is like it's just, there's a lot happening here that I really appreciate. A lot of stuff that, if you think about it, you kind of get the chills a little bit.
I agree. This won't come as a surprise to people because I've said it each of the times that we've talked about the Evil Dead. The deadites in this film bumped for me on first watch because there's not manic energy. They don't become wild creatures. They don't become gargoyles instantly. It's a different type of deadite. The evil spirits that possess this new group tend to relish their time in the physical form. They have more of a Cenobite philosophy of enjoying the pain of the flesh that's been denied to them. They're exploring these new forms by cutting them apart.
Right.
Everyone who becomes possessed becomes a bloody canvas for their new art.
I do think that when the blonde hair girl's name again, I want to say Nicole. Natalie. When she gets stuck in the cellar with Mia, and Mia takes cuts her own tongue in half. She's always kind of like, "Hey, check this out."
Come on. Isn't this cool? Look what I can do with this dumb flesh that you have. You can be damaged so easily. Isn't it interesting? And that level of constant torment and it is damaging. Like, you don't come out of this movie feeling the same way.
No, and you've got that Toby Hooper thing where first these people are going to suffer physically, then they're going to suffer mentally, and then they're just going to die.
Right. The tether will be cut. And this is one of those few films that approaches that Hooper level of what happens to somebody when their connection to reality is snapped in half. And I feel it. And frankly, if there is something that we've learned all too well over the past 12 years since this movie premiered, it's that when it comes to all this harrowing drama, bloodshed, torment, torture, it's a feature. It's not a bug. All right? Tearing us asunder from one another and making those fissures and cracks that are underneath us all explode apart. This asymmetric psyop we all live in and under, shedding people's ideals and morals apart. We let it in, and then it spreads. So, those people that you used to know, and they seem like nice enough people, kind-hearted, reality-based thinkers. They're slicing off whatever or whoever this other source tells them to do in order to belong to a destructive source. We live in the cabin now. We don't have to go out there and try to discover Henriettas anymore. No, our relatives become them.
Yep.
It sucks. I'm not happy about it, but it absolutely, you can't say it's not happening because that, again, would be denial.
A lot happening here.
Let's move on to bargaining. First rule of bargaining, duct tape can't solve every problem, but David does believe it can. It can seal off wounds. It could maybe save your girlfriend from bleeding out. It's not the end all be all he thinks it is.
No, he's trying. God bless. He's finally trying something.
He is. He has moved from doing nothing to attempting to do something. And leave it to Eric to try and convince David of rational solutions. Those rational solutions being live burial, dismemberment, and purification by fire. He hasn't quite reached that stage, Dave. Not, God bless him, he just hasn't.
Yeah.
He keeps coming back with like, well, what if Mia is just crazy like our mom? What if because she's an addict, she just needs a doctor? What if she was poisoned by something in the basement? What if you can burn her to death and enter torment? Counters Eric. And they don't really have a lot of bargaining time because that's when Natalie, having lopped off one arm with an electric knife, comes back into the room, her still functioning arm holding a nail gun. And she nail guns the shit out of everybody, including herself.
Oh my God. I'm pretty sure.
There's so many nails in that nail gun.
Did I see things wrong? Did Eric's hand get nailed in his face?
Yes. He gets nailed a lot.
But like, God bless him. He does not immediately just pass out. He attempts to better unnail my hand from my head.
They also take a fair amount of crowbarring. She crowbars the fuck out of them.
Yeah, they're just like they're like they're her punching bags.
David gets crowbarred 3 or 4 times, and then Eric gets crowbarred to the head, and his hand completely fucking mangled via crowbar. That, let me tell you, preview for Choose Your Own Deathventure. There are no good options. I am not choosing Eric.
No. Like I said, I probably relate the most to Eric. Even though he's a complete weenie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do not want to go, I don't want anything that happens to him. It's all bad.
It's bad on top of bad on top of bad. And he's just going on an endless amount of adrenaline. But David shotguns Natalie's other arm off. that finally seems to do the damage that's required and decides, I'm going to do what I need to do. That's a direct quote. So here is now direct action from David. Now, it's not direct action with anything that's going to stop this, but at least he's starting somewhere. He burns Olivia's corpse outside. He dismembers dismembers Natalie rather in the shed, a la Ash from Evil Dead 1 and 2. And then he's about to burn the cabin down with a gas can. And then Mia starts singing their mother's lullaby. And he's like, I can't do this. And then an idea strikes. Oh, I'm sorry. Actual physical fucking lightning hits a tree outside. The movie is not subtle. He's like, what if I chose door number 3? Bury my sister alive. But he's got a plan. He's going to resurrect her afterwards. So he digs a grave and prepares to bury his own sister alive. Remember, this is meant to be in the depression stage. Nothing about this is fun. This is depressing. I do not want to bury a sibling alive. I don't want to bury anyone alive. I do not personally want to be buried alive. It fucking sucks. But David descends. In order to get through it, he gets through it. And so to find the real Mia and begin the process of actively healing her means killing off the part of her that he does not like and will harm everyone else. So that means he's got to go into the basement and get her. And when you go into the basement to get somebody and you find them, they're a dirty peanut. Gina, she's quite an active dirty peanut. Perhaps our most active.
I would say so, yeah. Is this our first female dirty peanut?
I want to say yes. I would be remiss to say this comes out several weeks after our Nosferatu episode, but we never really declared Count Orlock a dirty peanut. But he absolutely qualifies, yes? He lives in a basement and his blanket is rats and maggots.
Yeah,
Gina.
he's definitely not going to smell too good.
We are told several times he smells awful.
Yeah.
In the midst of his making love, when he says to You have to bounce on it. Crazy style.
Could not wait.
She grabs his back, and it's like, ooh, some of that's coming off.
You
okay.
could not wait for an opportunity to do the voice again, could you?
Yeah. We're going to see how many weeks. I mean, it's going to be a weird dichotomy because it doesn't show up at all in end of days because we recorded that well in advance.
End of days doesn't deserve the voice.
End of days. Let's make a
Christ in New York.
It's time for shake, grab that floor pizza. Anyways, Mia is a very active dirty peanut, and she beats the shit out of David in that basement, including throwing him up against stone walls. So if you're looking for Evil Dead style moments, the movie still has them. They're just encased within these genuine emotional, cruxes that people have to experience and get through.
Right. And the gore is considered. Now, I realize that the beauty of Evil Dead 2 is there's a lot of blood and gore, but this feels more, obviously it's way over the top. But
yeah.
It's not comical gore. It's
no
cringy.
One's eyeballs flying out into someone else's
right.
mouth.
It's cringe and look away gore.
And do not get me wrong, I love eyeballs that fly out into other people's mouths.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a different kind of goriness.
Yes, I want it all. I don't want just one thing. Just one thing isn't valid. It's a buffet, and I get to choose from all of it. And this one has very over-the-top gore, but in the most cringy, heartening way possible. When David's flung into walls and slashed with a razor, nearly drowned, and who saves him? Motherfucking Eric comes through at least once in this thing. And despite how dead he should be, ends up hitting possessed Mia in the back of the head with a shovel. And then keeling over, and then David says, "Oh, do you want to lie in this water? You should probably drown now. Why don't you drown?"
You're down to like minutes anyway. Let's make this quick.
Just like breathe in a lot of this basement water. When you did fine, but you're just hurting yourself even more, buddy. Just take a little wet nap here. So David must bury the past to resurrect his relationship with Mia. A little help from a car battery. See, he finally did something.
He did it.
That's how you survive terrible things. You do something, Gina.
Yep.
And so we now reach the acceptance phase. Even though he is confronted with how he ran away from his sister when she needed him the most. And he says, "I'm sorry. I did that. That's on me." And I could sit here and wallow in that, or I could do something about it. And he decides, I'm going to do something. I'm going to bury you alive with the plastic bag over your face. Enjoy that for however many minutes she's in there.
This ought to do it.
This ought to do it. And then he digs her up and he tries to revive her with the car battery, and that didn't work so much. But then he walks away. I guess the motion of him walking away is what finally does it.
I mean, he walked away from her before, and evidently this made her so angry that it brought her back to life. I mean, again, I get it.
Yeah. Again, like a fucking assassin, nailing it every time, Radcliffe. So yeah, he gets his real sister back, and she's whole again. She doesn't have a sliced tongue. Her skin is not scalded off. She is restored to her non-drug addicted persona. And he did that by doing something that was difficult and horrible and wrong, and it was torturous, but it's what needed to happen for her to actually live a functional life again. And he did it. And then he walked away again, but that helped somehow. And so they're like, let's grab the keys and let's burn this joint down and get out of here. Wouldn't you know it, Eric is still alive, Dick Fingers?
I mean, he's a deadite now, so I mean...
Yeah, he's a deadite now, and he's looking great. This is his best look.
Oh, he's so happy about this. He could not be more thrilled. Finally, I can fuck some shit up now.
I'm not just getting stabbed. I can walk around and do crazy ass shit. And so he stabs David in the neck. A lot of stabbing in this. And, you know, David knows this is not an injury he's going to recover from. He's gone through a lot to make, you know, Mia okay again. So he closes the door, says, get out of here, and blows up the cabin with a shotgun to a gas can.
I mean, he does, you know, make the ultimate sacrifice, one could say.
He accepts what he needs to do. This is him getting through to the other side. He has accepted what he has done. He's accepted the sacrifices that were made by others. He understands his role in this, and he takes it on himself. So this, oddly enough, that is the final end for him, for Eric. He gets blown up real good, and then they all cook for a certain amount of time. David bleeds out, and Mia thinks to herself, I'm on the other side of this. Turns out it is not. We've run out of things to say, but in terms of the 5 stages of grief, because now we're just into a monster movie.
I mean, we're in a Slayer video. It's raining blood.
It's raining blood. This apparently was some sort of world record for the amount of blood used in any one set. So there's that. The abomination rises from the ground. Her touch is sulfurous and burning, and Mia immediately does the thing that she used to do, which is run. She sees a hole in the ground. If I bury myself, I won't have to deal with this. Not this time. You can't just bury yourself, because at the other end is an abomination with a sulfur touch. You got to go through. She goes through. She gets into the shed. She finds things to help her. Like, she's going to come out the other side, this time with a chainsaw. Sure, she wedges herself in between the wall panels and the outside wall. And yeah, she gets sliced up a bunch of times with the machete she left behind. Again, this isn't Crystal Lake, Mia. You're not going to find a bunch of other machetes. Take the machete with you.
Take it with you.
But Mia ends up learning a lesson from her brother. The only way to get past this is by doing things. So she doesn't crumble when the chainsaw doesn't have any gas. She fills it up. She doesn't crumble when she gets sliced across the knee. Something I'm still feeling now.
Oof.
I watched it hours ago.
Yeah, that's another unexpectedly rough one.
She gets herself out of this trap situation outside. Yes, she almost gets away in that Jeep. Yes, she ends up getting trapped underneath that Jeep, her hand crushed underneath the top of it. But does she stop doing things? No. She can, if she survived everything leading up to this, she can survive this. And that means sometimes you got to pull your completely smashed hand off of the rest of your body, grab that chainsaw, and shove that motherfucker into a demon face first and saw that bad boy right down to the sternum and back up.
You know what? Honestly, after all this, if she wants to stay on drugs, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Who could blame her?
Yes. At least she will have earned it this time.
Yeah, I don't think melatonin's going to help you sleep after all this.
It's going to be real rough. But this is when I started openly weeping. Because you have to accept shit you cannot fucking change if you want to move past it in this world. And we're going to get a little bit vulnerable. I've done the therapy thing for a few years now, and there are elements of my life that are far from perfect and things that I want to improve. And yes, there are explanations, but they're not excuses. And I can be a better person, but that requires you to do shit. And it's uncomfortable shit. It's shit you don't want to fucking do. It hurts. It makes you vulnerable. You are scarred afterwards, but scars heal. Destructive behaviors only destroy. And so my plea to anyone who finds themselves in this sort of situation, I'm not preaching to you, Gina. You have plenty of experience in a lot of these areas. The world is better off with you in it. The world is probably better off with me in it. And I promise you, anyone who's listening to this right now, the world's better off with you in it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've struggled with this too. And you just, you gotta keep moving. That's all you can do. Yeah. You gotta rip your own hand off sometimes.
Oh God. You sure do.
Just rip that shit off.
Seriously. Unfortunately, you're not going to get it out of it unscarred.
It's going to suck. And tomorrow might suck too. And, I mean, right now we're all kind of just collectively dealing with a big old question mark going forward. And I am trying I'm trying to adopt the Buddhist philosophy of embracing chaos. Mm-hmm. And it's ironic that I am currently listening to an audiobook called It's Easier Than You Think because right now it's not particularly easy. No. I don't know when this book was written. I don't think it was written anytime near the beginning of the Trump presidency. So, and I don't mean to be like, oh, this will be the worst thing I'll ever experience, because it's probably not. But like, it's like, it is hard for me to just say, yeah, whatever happens, I'm just going to roll with the punches. I'm just going to look out for number one. But like, you have to take care of yourself. I mean, you have to do hard things and just because if you keep putting stuff off, if you keep burying your head, it's all going to blow up at some point. These things don't, things like that, they don't stay quiet forever. And I'm really glad personally that, men such as you and other men our age and younger are starting to realize you can't just walk around like pretending nothing's wrong and letting it all fester in you, because it's not healthy. You got to face things.
It will come out in very destructive ways.
Yeah.
We'll hurt people who do not deserve it. I'm not going to proclaim it to be easy. There's no quick fixes here. This is just the only way out is through.
Yeah, you gotta metaphorically rip your own hand off.
And so I did not expect this to be a particularly emotional episode of the show, but it has been for me. I hope other people find benefit in it. I know we've had funnier episodes, but this was surprisingly uplifting at the end of it. And so, I hope people find solace in that. And no, we're not going to give up.
No.
We're going to try to help ourselves, you, just by the act of talking and hopefully making you smile, making you think, giving you a slight distraction while you do other things that it's a momentary benefit to you. Just like we were before.
Yeah. I mean,
just like we were again.
We're just going to keep on keeping on, because that's all we can do.
There is one element of keeping on, and that's when we choose our own deathventure, where we decide of the deaths portrayed in this film, if you were forced to die in one of those ways, which one would it be and why? Up forbid, we have bludgeoned with a hammer, or you can slice your own cheek off, receive a concussive blow to the back of the head with a sink's edge and then a shower basin, and then have your head caved in via multiple strikes from that edge of the porcelain sink that broke off. And ultimately have your corpse burned. Then you could be dragged into a basement, bitten, your hand and forearm succumb to sudden oatmeal syndrome, cut off your own arm with an electric carving knife, nail gun yourself in the face, have your other arm shot off with a shotgun, and eventually dismembered. Or you could slip on a severed cheek and hit a toilet, kidney first, stabbed in the shoulder, stabbed multiple times with a hypodermic needle in the face, arm, and torso and hand, which dislodges just under your eyeball, nails shot into your forearm, hand, and upper torso, beaten with a crowbar, hand mutilated via crowbar, allowed to just rest in standing water, and eventually exploded in fire. Or have car-induced blunt head trauma, violated by Evil Dead vines, scaled with boiling hot water, tongue sliced in two, bashed in the back of the head with a shovel, smothered in a plastic bag, then buried alive. You come back from that. Then someone, this is a different person, shot in the arm, shot in the leg with a nail gun, crowbarred many times, slashed with a razor, thrown into walls, almost drowned, burned to death inside the worst cabin ever. Or you can be chainsawed in half from the face down.
You did forget one. If you forgot the girl at the beginning, she gets shotgun in the head.
Oh, she is burned alive and shotgun in the head. That is very, very true.
You know, that was going to be my first pick because, you know, obviously your head's blown off, so she goes quick, but she does burn a little bit. You know how I feel about that.
She is burning for a minute.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean 60 full fucking seconds.
I don't know about that. None of these are good. This might be our worst collection yet.
It really is.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be Mia because, you know, yeah, she comes back, but I mean, like, she's going to, you know, there's nothing in the lore that says, oh, she's going to magically forget about all this or anything. I mean,
right, exactly. She did live through it, but she's also one hand down.
Yeah, despite what I just said, I don't know that I'd want to keep going after this experience. Right. But I guess, I mean, I suppose David blowing up in the house, ultimately, you know, that's quick. I mean, yeah, I realize shot, nail gunned a couple times and crowbarred. But like, and then stabbed in the neck. But I think that, you know, in the end, you know, it's lights out quickly. So I think I'll take blown up in the house.
It's either that or I don't know that we can actually qualify Grandpa's death.
Oh, no. Yeah, I don't even like to think about that one.
It's terrible. But hammered in the head a bunch of times, like you'd probably forget that's happening after the third blow.
That's true. Although I will say, as a quick note, if you are understandably sensitive to animal death, you don't see, well, you kind of, you don't actually see,
you see the end result, but you don't see the action.
You don't see it actually happening, but you do see the body. So just keep that in mind. On the other hand, Olivia is the quickest to go. So, but
yes, but she also has to cut off a large portion of her cheek before that.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to stick with my original answer then.
Like, you have to mirror yourself. Wait, what? Come on. Before any of the other stuff happens to you, you got to huddle in a shower and carve off your face.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to stick with my original answer then.
Again, there are no good answers here.
There really are.
It is terrible. What isn't terrible is if you would join our Patreon, we do special bonus episodes for you. We answer your questions. We even do movie commentaries. And Gina is going to be doing some new stuff coming down the road that you're going to want to listen to as well. So we've got lots of new stuff happening in that space, and you can help keep this podcast going with your hard-earned dollars. We appreciate anything that you might have the ability to give, and we would love to have you join. Of course, you can always follow us on social medias, especially Blue Sky, which is, we have a Facebook group. I hate to hype Meta right now, especially on a day where they're like, we're done with fact checkers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say don't interact with us because we do get, decent interaction, but really Blue Sky is where it's at this point until something comes down the pike and fucks that up. But right now,
until that becomes shitified.
On January 7th, 2025, it's still a 90% okay place to be.
This episode comes out 23 days later, so who knows what the world will be like then. We're not going to predict.
Yeah, who even knows where it's going to be at that point.
But of course, we'd love to hear what you have to say. There's comments on Spotify. If you listen there, you can email us at killbykillpod@gmail.com. Please rate and review us because it helps us be seen and heard by other people. Those are all important things, and we'd love for all of them to happen. Follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We are, I think at this point, we are not that far from being able to monetize ourselves on YouTube. So there is that. Consider that. We would love for that to happen, because the more we can monetize the podcast to a certain degree, the more things we can do to help it be heard and seen by more people, and for it to roundly be more enjoyable to everybody. That's the ultimate goal here, is to make it sound as best as possible. And unfortunately, some of that takes money. Money I don't have as much anymore. So consider that. Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I write about movies and television and pop culture on my newsletter at GinaWatchesThings.substack.com. And I am pretty active on Blue Sky under Gina Does Things.
Do it today, people. Check it out. That just about does it. Don't worry, folks. The After Dark body count will continue as we enter February, and we've got some really fun things coming your way on the erotic thriller front, and some new movies as well. It's going to be a good time, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. Thank you all for your time and attention. Don't worry, folks. The body count will continue. For myself and for Gina. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger Delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.